That's right. We're finally doing it. I haven't been late to anything than ever as this. But the North remembers. Game of Thrones, the complete series. Not just season 1, but this is the only one I currently own on DVD so far as a box set. Probably one of the coolest box sets I have. Look at how awesome that is. Look at this freaking Ned Stark. Look at that guy. Look at that fucker. I don't know if I can focus on him well, but you see Ned Stark there sitting on his chair. Nothing happens to him if you haven't watched the show. He's completely fine. He's happy with his family, fighting for Westeros. Oh my god. But yeah, anyway, this is going to be quite fun. So yes, I know, I'm as late to this than ever. You probably wonder, why the hell am I talking about this a year later as the show finally ends? Everybody and their grandmothers, I've seen every single goddamn review, has seen the show completely, like 3 fucking times at this point. What the hell could I bring to the table? To that I say, we're in fucking quarantine. What the hell am I supposed to talk about? Camera's moving. Even the camera's saying I should do this. So I'm gonna do it. Well, I actually do have a fun little reason why I'm reviewing this actually so late after the show finally ended. Well, also technically 2 reasons, but the first one is actually more funny and interesting. So we're going to tell it in a little story. A song of laziness and curiosity to controversy. Man, that'd be a great title for a book. So, a long time ago, aka a year ago, in a room not so far away, which was this room, I was witnessing the season finale of Game of Thrones. Or, I should say, season and series finale of Game of Thrones. It was finally on its 8th season. A show that I've heard being talked about so much and being praised and debated and discussed for the last 7 years while I was still in the Walking Dead fandom. Fun little fact, HBO originally was offered The Walking Dead before Game of Thrones. And the reasoning of denying the greenlit was, and I quote, too violent for HBO. How things can change. And that's what's fantastic, honestly, about the show, though. So much gore, so much violence, but yet you're so interested in it. You're so intrigued, not just because of the excessive violence, but because of the characters that have to be involved in it. And that's what really makes Game of Thrones such a magnificent show. Obviously, not just from the fact that it gets the iconic legendary fantasy formula of this fantasy medieval-like magical world with your trolls and your knights and your princes and princesses, kings and queens, lords and ladies, all the classic shit that you've seen since like J.R.R. Tolkien back in the 1920s. But they add that nice little really gory twist with a little bit of sprinkled incest around. And that's really why for many years I was just like, look, the show looks cool, the girls look incredibly hot, admittedly I'm a guy, but still, it wasn't my cup of tea. I never gave it a chance until I saw people just start talking about the final season, season 8. And the fun controversy that came from that. That was the first time, aside from Star Wars, that I saw a fandom get so upset with how a show was handled that before even the final episode, were demanding through petitions to rewrite the whole season. That's when I knew something interesting was pulling my attention to watch the show, and that I had to accept that call of interest. That's one way to put it. So, a week before the show ended, I decided to watch only the 8th season. Decided to watch all the episodes of season 8. I know, what an introduction to the show after all the incredible seasons. I've seen them all now at this point, but yeah, I started. It wasn't even the exact first episode, which was even funnier. I believe it was like the 4th episode, 3rd, I'd even say, of season 8. So I was even way past the Battle of Winterfell. I didn't even know of any of that stuff that happened. So I just saw really immediately a lot of the lame stuff of the show. Like, a lot of shit. A lot of shit. That made no goddamn sense. But at the same time, I was starting to get so impressed with what I was realizing was the breathtaking visuals and incredible character development that was clearly shown when it was handling things correctly with Jon Snow And Peter Dinklage as one of the coolest characters of all time, Tyrion Lannister. He would end up... Dude, that guy is literally... I'll get to the characters in a bit. But also the breathtaking, once again, special effects with stuff like the dragons, the ships, these grand worlds that you get to explore. The land of Westeros. A land that holds 7 different kingdoms. And those are just the main powerful ones. Not to mention all the other little kingdoms that are around or even are tempted to be sprouted from. And all the diverse cultures, religions, goods and evils. So much to explore. It was that same feeling that I had when I was watching The Lord of the Rings for the first time, or even Star Wars, which they're pretty much all kind of the same thing, just with different styles. So I instantly knew I was going to really like the show. But I saw the problems that Season 8 held, so all that I got from that after watching those few episodes was, I really need to watch this show from the beginning to the end and see what was the hype about. So a few months later, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to my local bookstore and find me a $3 copy, I shit you not, of the complete first season of Game of Thrones. I set up my PS4 in the family room so my mother and I can watch it for the first time, because both of us were equally talking about how we hear everyone talk about the show, but we don't get the fuss. Watched episodes 1 through 3 that first night, and I was instantly hooked. Now, since obviously you can tell I'm doing a complete review of a TV show that's 8 fucking seasons long, I should really start explaining how I'm going to do all this. Because, yeah, I'm not going to make this video an hour. Don't worry, we're safe. I'd love to talk for an hour about Game of Thrones, but too much. I understand. So I decided I'm going to actually divide this video into simply 2 sections. Because I really think it's simple. Good and the ugly. We're not going to... Well, yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it really gets ugly by the final season. So, good and the bad, let's just make it simple, which is, I believe, seasons 1 through 7. 7 is starting to get more into the bad stuff by the end of it, but aside from that, seasons 1 through 7, especially 1 through 6, I would say, is some of the best content of the show. I would even say of TV history, or this generation's TV entertainment. After that, we're all going into the bad with the ending of season 7, especially season 8. But let's first start with the good, why people love this show in the first place, and what got me hooked after watching those first 3 episodes of season 1. What Game of Thrones does so well that I instantly realized by those first 3 episodes was its devotion to character development and world building. Yes, the action scenes are awesome when the knights fight and kick each other's asses and rip each other apart with swords or even burn each other up with the dragons. They look cool. But nothing will ever beat the idea of not just seeing and being impressed by a fight, but caring for someone or being interested in this great evil involved in the fight, making the stakes much higher and more exciting. The reason people cheered out of their minds when Endgame's final battle showed up is because you care for almost every single goddamn main character that was being involved in that final battle. So when you saw the main Avengers and all those iconic characters finally show up on the big screen all in together, all in one in the first time, you lost your shit. So Game of Thrones has always been devoted to character development. From that first episode, you get the grand introduction to the land of Westeros. But not just that, the first, and personally, and I think everyone can agree, favorite land, the land of Winterfell, with the iconic House Stark, who are the lords of Winterfell, specifically the ones who guard all the land. And with the iconic family, with the great honorable Ned Stark and his children, Arya, let's see if I get this right, Arya, Sansa, Jon, I'll get to him in a bit, Robb, and even the adoptive one, you would say, Theon Greyjoy, the Stark that was made a Stark after a great battle that took place with the Greyjoys a few years back. And all the other characters are also fun too, but I'd be here forever because Game of Thrones is like 1,000 fucking characters that I cannot talk about in one video. It's beautiful, peaceful, absolutely gorgeous visuals of a winter-like wonderland with castles of knights and lords and ladies, all to be explored in the first 20 to 30 minutes of the show's introduction. That's what Game of Thrones did at its best, and what it did for the next 6 seasons. I mean, at this point, I'm just going to really be talking about my favorite moments. For Season 1, without a doubt, it's not just that first episode, but by the end, when you get that insane twist, that for the character, that's even funny when you read the comments nowadays under the clips, we all thought, spoiler alert, for everybody who hasn't seen the show yet, I'm about to get in some serious-ass spoiler territory, even though everything in Game of Thrones is a massive spoiler territory. This little guy, when we thought he was going to be the main character, gets his fucking head beheaded by one of the most infamous bad guys in TV history. That is the kind of shit Game of Thrones brings you in. But what I love about it so much is that so many people just seem to only talk about the violence, but we don't really explain why we love the violence in the show so much. What shocked me first about the show is, I admit, how violent it was. And honestly, I'll admit, it gets really gory and really fucking dark. Really dark. Like, there's some stuff that's coming to my mind again that I'm going to talk about in a sec that just gets really disturbing. That even my own mother stopped watching for a reason because she thought it went too far. But the reason we are so intrigued and just absolutely shocked and even angered when we see these great horrors committed on the show constantly is because the fact that, once again, the introduction of Game of Thrones shows this beautiful, loving, peaceful, almost perfect world, or at least exciting world, where everybody seems to be at peace, having their good lives, happy together, and getting ready for anything bad to come, but seem to be just fine and getting by. And you see the beautiful castle at Winterfell, you see the great happy family with Sansa and Arya even having their stupid little playfulness and, classic, bigger sisters and younger sister fiascos. And then you see even someone who clearly is part of now the family, Theon Greyjoy, that was involved there after a great conflict that happened years ago, that seems to be getting along with everyone. Everything seems nice. But by episode 9, you really realize, holy shit, things are getting really bad. I'd even rather say by episode 5 or episode 6, things get really bad. But by the time of Ned Stark's beheading, you see, wow, things are about to hit the fucking fan. And really gets you going and empathizing with so many of the characters and our soon-to-be heroes of the show. Arya, and then soon even Sansa. That's what the show does so well and kept doing constantly every season, finding new ways to surprise and shock us, but even at the same time finding new ways for us to care and get excited for these characters. And when they finally get their victories and the bad guys get their karma, oh, it is satisfying. That first time you see one of the Lannisters get fucked over completely after that first battle between Robb Stark and the surprise attack and when the wolves come in and you hear all the Lannisters are terrified and making up these ridiculous manipulative stories to the people how they got eaten alive is so satisfying, because when you know what these people are capable of, to see them even get one little defeat is just one of the most satisfying things ever. And then to the other thing that I mentioned, what the show does so well, at the same time what that battle did on the aftermath is what I loved about the show, is show and explore what makes a character good and shows the good nature of our heroes. With one of my favorite past characters who is now dead, Robb Stark. Possibly one of the greatest good guys I'd even say in TV history. A man fighting to avenge the death of his father, but at the same time secure the peace and justice of his land, while at the same time dealing with the conflict of being a good person and forgiving leader at heart. Throughout every single battle you see Robb Stark take place in, he always tries to be the most honorable man, the most caring and forgiving man he can. One of my favorite scenes is that scene where one of his generals tell him, we have too many prisoners, there's not going to be enough to feed everybody. And he still says, I don't care, we're not killing them. And he goes, but you're going to let some people starve over some prisoners and traitors? And he goes, it doesn't matter, we're not going to execute them. And though he clearly gives the reason that he doesn't want his sisters to be tortured or given a reason to be tortured because he still thinks they're under clear captive of the Lannisters, you clearly can see that he just really doesn't want to see people get tortured. Even if they kind of fucking deserve it, you just see that he's still such a good person at heart that he's still not going to give in to his anger, to his violence, to his hate. He's pulling a Master Yoda. What also makes that character so tragic is then when we come into possibly everybody's, would I say favorite or saddest scene? Depressing scene? I think I'd say the most depressing scene, but without a doubt one of the greatest scenes in TV history. The Red Wedding. They make you love this character so much, make you understand him, feel for him, feel his struggle, cheer for his victories, want him to win, and at this point, when he finally seems to be married to the girl of his dreams, have a happy life and find peace once all the war is over, he gets slaughtered with the entire fucking family, the entire Northern Army. It's pretty shocking. I'll never forget watching that scene for the first time. And what's crazy about it is that, remember, I watched all this show after it was done years before. I watched that Red Wedding scene years after it was filmed and years after everybody reacted and had their initial shockwave of it. So I was so late to the party, and I'll admit, I even knew about it. I've seen all the memes. I've seen all the reactions to it. I would have seen that scene on YouTube so many times at that point that I pretty much knew everybody was going to die exactly. But it did not take away from the fact that now I had this extra added sugary, I'm not using a good metaphor, sugary layer of empathy and care and understanding of the characters that were involved in this great massacre, that when you see it all happen, when you see that first stab on that poor goddamn girl's belly with her baby in there, you really feel it. It hurts really fucking bad. What made those first seasons so good. But the show gets even better. I mean, I can go on forever, but I haven't even brought up the fact that freaking Tyrion Lannister is probably one of the coolest characters of all time, and Peter Dinklage is probably now one of my favorite actors of all time as well. Every single scene with that guy is just so iconic, so incredibly well written, so incredibly directed. Every time he's on the screen and he's about to say a word, I just am glued to it instantly and just want him to say more. I wish I had a book of just all the lines that Tyrion Lannister said so I can learn to say them in real life when I'm really annoyed by somebody. He's just so good. And without a doubt, one of the best moments with that character is the iconic demand for trial by combat speech. That scene was so powerful, emotional, yet heartbreaking and gut-wrenching at the same time. When you see a man so insulted, so beaten down, and so humiliated that he's even betrayed in the worst way possible by the person he thought he loved and loved them back, to be them accusing them of crimes he did not commit, is just something you cannot deny. It gets you so excited and so pumped up and shocked to see him lose it. The guy who's supposed to be so calm and cool and intelligent just say, fuck it, I'm gonna curse out every single person that ever done me wrong in this place. Me, I would even say one of my top 5 favorite scenes, not just in Game of Thrones, but in TV history. No special effects, no epic final battles, no epic action scenes, just characters speaking, incredibly well-written dialogue, and an incredibly beautifully directed scene. But then we go to really, yes, I would say, my true favorite character of the show, Mr. Jon Snow. Jon Snow is the hero we all need and the hero we want to have. He is the guy that we all wish we had his hair for. The guy that we wish we had his incredibly sexy beard for, that no matter how many battles and blood gets soaked on, still looks so goddamn good somehow. The guy that we wish taught us how to use a sword. The guy we wish we had his pet ghost for. He is just so incredible, and obviously, the best scene with him is the Battle of the Bastards. That sequence was so perfected and masterfully done that when I created, fun fact, my film club in my high school, the first thing, aside from showing Star Wars, I wanted to do was analyze the Battle of the Bastards scene, because I was watching Game of Thrones for the first time as I was making that club, and I said it to even my friends who helped found the club with me. If we're making this club, we're going to analyze scenes and for movies and shows, and we have to analyze the Battle of the Bastards and show what it does so well. The Battle of the Bastards is masterfully directed. Each fight moment that happens in that is just so goddamn just exciting and just balls to the wall on the edge of your seat, that every time Jon Snow takes out that sword as the incoming raid of freaking Bolton men are coming at him and yet he still stands his ground, is just so epic that I wish I had a poster for that to put it all over my beautiful white wall. But that was seasons 1 through 7. Those are some of my favorite personal moments of the show. I haven't even mentioned Daenerys Targaryen, or should I say Queen and Breaker of Chains. I haven't even mentioned Arya Stark being one of the most badass female characters of all time. The fact that Cersei is probably one of the most evil bitches that have ever walked the earth, or ever been created to pretend to walk the earth, that should be murdered, tortured, beaten down, and burnt alive at the stake as soon as we get the chance to get her corpse. But those are my personal favorites. Those are, for me, examples of what makes Game of Thrones so great. Its devotion to world building, character development, and its excellent attention to detail when it comes to the visuals and sequences that are focused on every single seasons that was seasons 1 through even mid-season 7. Almost every single one of those episodes, even though a lot of fans can debate that some were better than others, I was never bored by it. Now, after you hear me just practically suck the dick of the creators of the show and the masterwork that was seasons 1 through 7, you can't imagine possibly how it could go so badly so quickly, and how things can turn so quick and so drastically. You'd swear that I'm practically exaggerating at this point. And I'll admit, I really am. And I think most people, even though they don't want to accept it, sometimes really are. We have to come to terms with the fact that Season 8 wasn't that bad. I'll admit, it wasn't the worst content of all time. It wasn't the worst piece of TV content ever made. It wasn't the worst finale ever. I would put Season 8 to the way I compare the Star Wars prequels. Specifically Episode 1 through 2, because 3 gets a pass. That was Game of Thrones Season 8. It wasn't the equivalent of 20 years, but when the fact that people forget that I didn't even realize when watching and reading the history of how the show was made, that they took an extra year off to finish Season 8, and it was only 6 episodes, and that we all know what happened to those final 6 episodes, you can't deny it and not see the fact of why people could be so pissed off and at least disappointed. It really gets bad. And, I'll admit, the first 2 episodes of the season are great. Especially that first one. It's handled epically. After you see, the final, by Season 6, the Battle of the Bastards, and finally everybody coming back together with all the stakes to finally be set up for that grand battle between Cersei and everyone else, and the White Walkers and all of Westeros. It's really exciting. That intro, when you finally hear once again the clear callback to the intro of Season 1 of how you first see Winterfell for the first time, and you hear that incredible score. To be honest, yes, the Battle of Winterfell has its problems. I'm not going to even explain it completely here. Once again, watch one of the videos I'm going to put in the link in the description down below that analyzes that finale perfectly of everything that's wrong with it. But even with that, it was still awesome. So many of the visuals were so epic. Despite all its problems, the stuff that worked really worked. That intro, as stupid as it was, to send all the Dothraki somehow just balls to the wall into the fucking horde, as if they were just going to charge into a wall, was stupid, but still looked absolutely epic. Watching that on my screen was just one of the most terrifying and epic visuals of all time. To see all the flames of hope and all the flames of their swords slowly die out as they're all murdered one by one. The visuals of the dragons flying in the sky and fighting, oh my god, it's almost as cool as the giant riding the fucking mammoth in Season 4. I love Game of Thrones. So much did work well, and honestly, that was probably the last episode of Game of Thrones that is handled close to perfection, or at least handled nearly great. A solid 8 out of 10. It was a great battle. Yes, it was too dark in many places. Yes, it was way too goddamn long. It was practically, that episode was the length of a movie. It's already been decided. Officially, I believe, I forgot who it was. I believe it's the Academy Awards that officially declare a movie, like a full-length movie, is at least 40 minutes long. And that episode of Battle of Winterfell is 80 minutes. Yeah, that thing is a fucking movie. That's an entire movie to watch. So get ready to give a lot of free time away to watch that episode. But despite all that, it's handled epically. The closure for so many characters, like I even said, the sacrifices of so many, the redemption of so many characters like Jaime Lannister and Theon Greyjoy to even nearly give up their lives, some entirely, like Theon, for the greater cause of defending the land of Westeros, is epic to watch. After that, though, things really go downhill. You first start to notice things get really bad when the first sign that things were just going absolutely batshit crazy is when Jaime Lannister, as I said, had made that grand redemption arc that was clearly set up since Season 1 to be him finally changing for the better, to just all of a sudden give up after banging his new lover and go back to Cersei Lannister, that evil bitch of a sister, and change everything and destroy everything that had been set up for the last 7 seasons. That's when I knew things were starting to go bad. And that's probably, without a doubt, the biggest problem that Season 8 suffered from. I understand Game of Thrones has always been famous, as I said myself, for its shocking twists and its big dark turns and its great surprises that it loves to give. But once you're already at the finish line and at the finale, you really can't bring surprises anymore. Surprises are meant to be for the story as it's building and as it's continuing before it gets to its big finale. Stuff that helps you get a new perspective of your story or new ways to your story before you make it to that big finale. The reason Empire Strikes Back is so iconic is not because it was the finale to the Star Wars trilogy. It's because it was the middle story, the mid-chapter, that had this great twist of the reality of Luke and Darth Vader's relation and Luke's family history. That was so shocking that changed the events of what was going to happen by the end. She's been through so many awful things. If the murder of her friend is what led her to madness, I don't think D&D understands what the hell makes someone go mad, or how you go mad. But that was probably the definitive example that everybody brings up of what made Season 8 suck so much. And it, without a doubt, was the big problem. So many things that were set up throughout those first 7 seasons, throughout the entire show, that were finally being built up to this great finale, to be then just entirely written off, or to just change course completely by the finale, or things to get absolutely just thrown out the window and not matter anymore, could be frustrating, ridiculous, disappointing. And that's unfortunately how one of the greatest TV shows or influential TV shows of all time ended. And that's what's so just frustrating to watch. I was watching it again finally after a year for the first time on my TV. And watching it, it had like a whole, I swear, if I really did an analyzation of that final season, if I reviewed every one all together, I would just list off all the problems I wrote down or just said in my head that were happening. I swear every other 5 minutes by those last 2 episodes, I was saying, why is this so long? Why is this panning and focusing so much on this one thing? Why is this person doing this? They wouldn't do that. There was nothing to show that they would do that, or nothing big to change the reasoning for doing that. Why is this person saying that? He has never said that. Why is this person here? He shouldn't be here. Why would they just throw that away? That was something you were talking about for like the last few episodes, or last few seasons, or since the beginning, and you just forgot about it? That was Season 8 in a nutshell. Yeah, Season 8 kind of sucked. It wasn't terrible. If I had to rate every season, as I said I would do altogether, without a doubt would just give it a nice, solid, okay 6 out of 10. It really sucks to say that, honestly, because, as you heard me for the last 20 minutes, Game of Thrones is such an exciting show, and the first 7 seasons show it perfectly. For most of it, it was exciting. So the fact that that was the finale, and that especially for people like me that watched it for the first time, that to be their intro, really gives it a bad rap. And it's what really makes reviewing TV shows so complicated and confusing. This was the show that I mentioned when I reviewed Clone Wars a few weeks back, of why it was so hard for me to make a new rating system, because I realized how complicated it can be to not just talk about a show, but make a show. Because really, as I said even as a joke earlier, it kind of has a point of the fact that how episode 2 of Season 8 was practically a movie. Each episode of a show is within itself a movie. I know I gave the way I rate each show with the example of it just being one big book and each episode being like its own chapter. But in a sense, every single episode really is a movie in the equivalent of film. You know, it could just be 10 to 20 minutes, but still each 10 of those 20 minutes tells its own individual story. Even though in the end, if it adds up to one bigger story, each one somehow explores something new to that story that you did not know before the last episode. Or sometimes it could be a multiple part episode, or 2-part, 3-part, 5-part episode, and all be connected to one big story, practically making it a movie. So it's always so hard to review a show, and when you claim you love it so much, and when the first 7 seasons are so incredible and prove that, but then Season 8's there, just like that weird, ugly, smelly kid that really stands out as like, this is not the beautiful, happy little boys you were talking about. That sounds really weird. That is probably my weirdest metaphor I've ever made. I apologize for that. So you've clearly seen the potential that this show had. And honestly, at the end of the day, still really kept. You know, not all of Season 8 was terrible altogether. So those last 4 episodes aren't really going to, crush, the last 8 years of awesomeness and excitement that this show brought to many people, and now including me. So, even though as much as it was disappointing by the end, I cannot deny that, in conclusion, Game of Thrones is one of the most incredible, exciting, breathtaking shows in its character, in its music, in its visuals, in its storytelling, from, yes, even by the end, beginning to end, that it could bring. And even with those clear bad bumps that it has, by the end of it, it cannot take away the excitement that I felt the first time discovering the world of Westeros in Season 1 with the Iron Throne, a fight between the 7 kingdoms, and watching Mr. Ned Stark get beheaded in Season 1. Altogether, I'm giving Game of Thrones a 10 out of 10 in TV as an overall show. For me, it just doesn't take away the magic that Game of Thrones as a show had. Those last 4 episodes were disappointing as hell, but it does not take away the magic that were, the other 65 episodes? Too good to deny. Guys, that was my review for Game of Thrones. I'm so happy I finally did this. I told myself I was going to do this for so many months after I finished the show, and I finally did it. Guys, what did you think of Game of Thrones? What is your favorite season? My personal favorites are 4 and 6. We debate to me after that. What do you think about that? What are your favorite characters? What did you think about Season 8? Did you think it was the greatest abomination in humanity? Do you think it destroyed world peace and created World War III altogether? I want to hear it. Let me know in the comments down below. What other shows should I review next? I have so many in mind that I have planned. Hint, hint, I'm planning to do Breaking Bad soon. That's going to be a fun one. And The Walking Dead. But that's going to be another fun one. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay home, stay safe, especially right now because of the pandemic. But even more now than ever because of a lot of the protests and riots that are happening around the country that are going to cause a lot of scary shit to happen in a few days. So just for safety, unless you have something to protect yourself with, just be careful out there. Thank you all so much. Love you all to death. Hope you all have a lovely day. The North remembers.